bad company, but just simply because I needed more for my clients, right?
Yeah.
I left the bank because I couldn't do what I wanted to do for my clients. And when you're in a captive company, you can only do so much for your clients. I was in the same sort of position, just getting paid more for doing what they wanted me to do.
So, welcome everybody to the Visionaries podcast. My name is Tyrone Hinds. I'm going to be your host today.
Alrighty.
We got a special guest today. We got a senior executive director, actually a good friend of mine, been in the industry for quite some time. We're going to hear from his story today. He's a family man. He's a businessman. He's the newest $400,000 earner with Experior Financial Group. Give it up for senior executive director, Mr. Tariq Bakil. Let's go. What's up, brother?
Hey, not much, brother. Just living the dream.
Good
That's what
stuff.
I
Good
can
stuff.
say. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, man. Yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to join me today, man. I've been waiting to get you on here.
There we go, bro. I've been seeing all the great people you've had in the past. I'm like, when's my time to happen? I'm like, when's
I
Tyrone gonna bless me with a Facebook Live?
No, man. I had to get you on here, 100%. Like for those of you who don't know Tariq's actually a good friend of mine, and he's actually the one that introduced me to this industry. Uh, about 9 years ago was the first time we had the conversation, and literally started off because he was helping me with my finances, making sure that I had the right insurance protection, and he was in the process of getting his license, and introduced me to the opportunity, and been here ever since. And but he's had a successful career here, so I'm excited for tonight, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, it's been some time, man. Like, we started off, just seeing each other in the parking garage of the building we lived in. Then, I joined the bank and I was like, hey, I know you. And yeah,
Yeah,
it was made, brother. And
yeah.
yeah, it's
We lived
great.
in the same building for a few years actually.
Yeah.
You were 410, I was 310. And
Yep.
then we worked at the same bank together, ended up working in the same department, and then here we are now working together as business partners.
Yeah, man, it's crazy how the universe aligns people in certain ways, man. It's just wild.
It's awesome, brother. I'm telling you, man. But
Hmm.
yeah, man, I got some questions for you, brother. I got some good questions, and we want to hear your journey. We want to hear about your background and how you came to become a $400,000 earner in this industry, right? But before even any of that, I want to ask you, what were you doing before financial services? Tell us about who you are and your upbringing, and then what were you doing before financial services?
Yeah, I'll tell you my story. More or less, my parents, they both emigrated here, from the Middle East and from the Caribbean. And, when they came here, they didn't really have much. So for them, just understanding and learning finances is always sort of a topic, a hot topic. And growing up, we grew up in a lower income area of Toronto. Paying my bills is to just have more overdraft that I can dip into.
Wow.
And I took what I thought about it and was like, wait, so you're gonna get more overdraft protection now. What's gonna happen next month, right? What's gonna happen the month after that? There's only so much overdraft protection you can get, right?
Yep.
And I looked at her whole profile and I'm like, man. So I started doing what they weren't paying me to do, which was I started thinking outside the box and having deeper conversations with people and just trying to coach them on credit, on budgeting, helping them be strategic with their money. And as you know, at the bank, we're monitored, right? They monitor how much time we spend per client, right? How
Yeah.
many clients we see per hour, right? Average handling time, all the after service time, the what's it called, after call?
After call work.
Yeah, everything. Man, you can't even go to the bathroom for 3 minutes without
No,
someone.
trust me.
So they quickly realized that I was spending more time and I wasn't as profitable as I was before in terms of targets and quotas. So they
Wow.
started listening in on my calls, and that's when I got my first coaching, right?
For helping somebody.
For helping somebody, brother. And I was told, hey,
Wow.
you're not getting, and the coaching was very specific on one call because somebody asked me, it's like, hey, I'm applying for a credit card at BMO. I get rejected. I'm told my credit's not up to par. I'm
Yep.
like, I don't know what to do to get my credit to a point where I can now be accepted by a major bank. So I recommended a secured credit card and then mentioned a company, but I'm like, hey, we don't have it here, but what you want to look into is a secured credit card. At least you put some money as a security, they'll give you a credit card, they'll start reporting on your credit bureau, and one day, that'll amount to some positive credit history for you, right?
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that advice, but I got coaching for that. So that was the first
Wow.
step. And then, I have a little bit of a problem with authority. So like I like started the little fire started burning. So I'm like, I'm like, and this is not to paint the bank I worked at with a bad paintbrush, because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, we have to realize all the banks are the same. They're a business, they're
Yeah.
designed to be profitable, just like any other business. So I get it, right? But a fire was lit under me now. So I'm like, no, like people are coming to me and they need help. If the bank's motto slogan is to empower, to help people, to be that place where people can get guidance, then let me do that for them.
Yeah.
So a few more coachings came after the fact, man, and then the second, the third, the fourth. I actually had six. And at the sixth coaching, I was my numbers were really low. So they were now telling me that they were going to be firing me with cause. And if my numbers don't pick up, so I'm like, you know what? I got to start looking. So thankfully enough, my manager, he was a good guy. He was just doing what he was being told, so I don't fault him. But my manager was friends with the manager at our practice company that hired.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
guess they were talking, and then that manager at our practice company reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I
Oh,
heard."
wow.
Yeah, so he's like, I wasn't thinking like, to go to that practice company, right? Because at
Wow.
that point in time, going 100% commission was like, I'm like, never done it. I've done side hustles and stuff, but like I always had the support or the predictability of a salary job, right? So he reached out to me and we talked on LinkedIn and he's like, hey, let's meet up. So um he met me in Brampton at a coffee culture on Queen, I think, Queen and Airport or something like that. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had just gone together with Sophie, so I was gonna be at her house that night, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll come to Brampton. My dad lives there, so So we met and we started talking, and then he's like, "Hey, here's an opportunity. Here's the opportunity to do the work that you're trying to do, but you can't, right? And you're going to get
Yes.
paid more for doing the work that you're trying to do, but you can't where you're at, right? You're going to get paid more than what they would ever pay you, right?
Yeah.
At that point in time, I was like my 6 or 7 year at the bank. I started at 32 grand, and I was only at 42 grand at that point, right? So,
Yeah.
and cost of living goes up, right? Like I wasn't in the best financial situation myself. I had debts, right?
Yeah.
Because car payments, insurance, just responsibilities, right? And I was, underwater like many other people. So he told me what the startup cost was. It was like a few $100, but at that time I was just like, man, I'm like 300-400 bucks. I'm like, that's what we make. Like that's a third of our paycheck at the
Yeah.
bank, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, let me think about it. So I went and I told Sophie, went back to her place. We started chatting. She asked me how it went. And we start talking. I'm like, yeah, I got to think about it. It's a lot of money. And funny enough, 2 days later, bro, she comes, we meet up after we're done work. We're going out to eat somewhere. She comes to me with an envelope. There's like 400 bucks in there. And then she's like, it's not a loan, it's a gift. She's like, take the job. I believe in you.
Wow. Look at that.
Man, that gets me emotional. But
Look at
yeah,
that.
man. Yeah, she it was because of her that we have what we have now. Honestly speaking, I don't think I believed enough in myself at the time
Yeah.
to move forward. But knowing that she had my back, at the very least financially for to start me off, that was all it took. And when I took that envelope, I'm like, man, I'm like, I have no reason, like there I
Yeah.
cannot fail, right?
And you
Even
can't let her
though she
down
didn't put the
now.
pressure on me,
Yeah.
right? I put the pressure on myself. I'm like, I
Yeah.
gotta prove to her that that investment she made, that gift she gave me, is going to pay dividends. So I took the
And it
job
is.
bro, at the
Look at
practice
that.
company, yeah, man. And yeah,
Wow.
it's been history since. I
That's
spent a little bit less than a year there. I introduced you to the company. I showed you
yeah.
what I was doing, and then by the time you got started, I was leaving because I had found Experior, right?
Yeah.
And I try to bring you along, but you're like, no, I just started, man. Like, let me see what I got going on here first before I make a move. And I'm like, okay, fair, but we always stay in contact.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's like, why I left the practice company, not because they're a bad company, but just simply because I needed more for my clients, right?
Yeah.
I left the bank because I couldn't do what I wanted to do for my clients. And when you're in a captive company, you can only do so much for your clients. I was in the same sort of position, just getting paid more for doing what they wanted me to do, right? So yeah, man, 2017 I joined Experior. Now we're 2025, 140 somewhat licensed agents, $400,000 income, about to hit the half a million mark probably in the next month or two. It's just
Jeez.
wild, bro. And man, and the best part about it is, I get to work with people like you and Carlo and Mayor and Sojan and Manny and like, I get to work with you guys. And the best part about my role is watching you guys level up and grow, man.
Mm.
Because when you guys level up and grow, that's when I truly win. Otherwise, just me solo dolo, right? Like, but it's
Yeah.
phenomenal, man.
Yeah.
It's amazing watching like people
That's a key
grow
point.
their teams, help people, not just with the financial services work we do, but help people with the role that we have to offer, right? Change their lives, free their lives. It's just wild, man. It's
That's huge. That's
so
huge.
I told you I
That's
was going to give you a short story. I gave you the long of it, but
it took over, man. No, that was good. That was good.
yeah,
And
but
you know what? Like you said, the last thing you said too was just the people that you can work with. Because a lot of people don't realize, like our practice company, you're pretty much on your own. Every man fit, fighting for themselves. It's every man for themselves, and you really just I've faced you see people getting jealous of you when you're getting successful and what have you, but the culture, the environment we've built here at Experior, and even within our hierarchy, Team Tugboat, it's second to none, right? And people don't realize coming into this type of industry like how easy it can be when you're surrounded around the right people because they're have that fear like can I do this, can I do commission based like what you were talking about, right? I thought the same thing because I've never done commission based, but here we are now, 8 years 7 8 years later, and it's just like wow, look at where we came from and look where we're at now. So it's like it's huge. It just shows anybody can do this.
yeah, man. Yeah, it's I never would have thought of myself being where I am today.
Yeah.
I always expected greatness for myself, but I never would have envisioned the kind of life, the business,
Yeah.
and what we've been able to create here, with great people. It's just it's still some days I'm just like, man, I'm like, is this real or like is this, a crazy dream? So
Yeah. Now, in your opinion, because you've obviously just mentioned you had over 140 agents, you've worked with tons of people, you've seen a lot of successful people. What are some of the common mistakes that you see new business owners in our industry make, and how can they avoid them, in your opinion?
yeah, you know what? The biggest thing is thinking that you can do it alone.
Mm,
Right?
yeah,
And I'll be honest, when I started with Xperia, I'm like, hey man, like I came from the practice company, I had some success there. I can do this, right? Show me what you
yeah,
got. And I went on a bunch of points alone, thinking I was going to just blow it out of the water, and I just blew it up in the bad way, right? Like those
yeah,
appointments went nowhere, right? So, coachability oftentimes is hard for people entering this industry, especially if they have experience at different at practice companies, right? It's, just taking the time to say, you know what, let me start from scratch. Let me learn this the way everybody else is learning it so I can have that success instead of just coming into it and saying, hey, I know what I knew, I know what I know, and I'm just trying to apply learnings and teachings from past experiences to what we got going on here because here's why that doesn't work so well because Experior is different, right?
mm,
They're completely different than
yeah,
any other financial services company, right? Man, I looked at a bunch of financial services companies before Experior, and Experior was the only one that actually talked about the impact of the work that we do
mm,
versus commission and the trips and the bonuses and all that stuff. Yeah, that's great, right? You can get that anywhere, right? But the fact that the conversation started off with the impact, right, shows us that it's truly needs-based. It's how do we help the people we serve in the best way possible? And if you
true,
come from a different company, whether it's in financial services or any other sales company for that matter, it's not like that. So what you know there is how to sell, right?
yeah,
And a lot of times it's like very direct sales, very transactional, very, hey, you know what, how much can you afford? Okay, here's what you get type thing versus sitting down and understanding the person for who they are and what's important to them and finding the right solution for them. That doesn't happen anywhere else outside of Spirit, not that I've seen or witnessed personally, right?
true.
So
True.
that's the biggest pitfall to anybody coming into Experior as a whole is, not being coachable. You got to be able to take a step back and just be like, okay, teach me everything you know, and then apply what you learned, right?
Yeah. That's a big challenge for a lot of people, especially people that are coming from another company because they think, well, I've already been doing it, so what are you going to teach me? And I've had to tell so many agents, like, well, if that's the case, then why not just keep doing it where you're at? Because obviously you have all the answers, right?
There-
But like, and how do you deal with that? Like, because a lot of you're gonna get a lot of agents that are uncoachable that want to do it their own way. How do you go about that and handling that?
You know what? Frank says it best. When you meet people like that, you just got to call the play and just keep finding more people, right?
Mm,
At the end of the day, all I can do is echo what's right and what should be done, but it's up to that person, right? Everybody is born with free will, right? It's up to them to actually say, hey, let me take this and start utilizing, start applying it to my business, right? Until that happens, nothing happens. And sometimes you just gotta watch people stumble and fall and make sure you're there to pick them up, dust them off, and hope that, that's the time that they're gonna say, okay, teach me what you got, right?
that's good.
And sometimes it takes a couple times. They got to go back out there. Some people are stubborn. They'll stumble and fall two, three times.
Yeah,
And eventually they'll come to their senses and they'll say, okay, now I'm ready to learn, right? And that's what I hope, right?
yeah,
We bring in people day in and day out, and we get people that, are coachable right from the very moment. They're like, hey, I see your track record, I see what you got going on, see what you've done, teach me what
mhm,
you know. And some people come in, with that, chip on their shoulders saying, hey, I had success before, and I'll continue to have success here. No problem, right? And
yeah,
all you gotta say is God bless you. Wish you the
yeah.
best.
That's it. That's all you can say.
That's
No,
it,
that's
bro.
huge. That's huge, man. So like, obviously, for those of you who are watching, guys, share this on your Facebook. We want to spread the word because this is an opportunity for those that whether you like Tariq, a former mechanic, right? Former banker. We've had people that were former forklift drivers on here, and you can see the level of success that we're getting here. So, guys, this is an opportunity for everybody. So, tune in, share it with a friend, share it on your Facebook, let people know. But Tariq, I got another question for you, man.
Mm,
Us being here at Experior, we know the mission. It's building financial foundations for families to empower them today and leave a legacy for tomorrow.
yes, sir.
Now you have an opportunity to be your own business owner. You're your own boss. You're your own business owner. You're building an empire at this point. What's your mission? What's Tariq Wakil's mission?
Tarek Bakil's mission is to work with Experior and become, $1 million earner within the company, right? But don't hear what I'm not saying. It's not because I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm a millionaire. It's no, because I know that becoming $1 million earner in this company means I would have had to help a lot of people along the way, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't just stop there in a million, right? And a lot of our top leaders, they echo the same sort of missions, right? We want to grow this as big as we possibly can because not only clients, families are being helped, but people's lives are changing through the means of the opportunity we have to share too, right?
yeah.
So the more money I make, the more plaques I get. I'm running out of space, man. Like that whole bookshelf.
I see that.
Yeah, but like the more all that to me, it's
Yeah,
just an indication that I'm treading water the right way. We're helping people. We're moving, right? We're
yeah.
growing, right? So that's the mission for me.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? You've helped me. You've helped me.
There you go, bro.
Just there, like I said at the beginning, right? When you came into this industry and it was literally we just bought our house, our first home. This was in 20 we bought our first home in 2015 and you and I sat in 2016.
Yep.
And it literally was just like, hey, I'm recently started with Sun Life and I'm training to become an advisor with them. And during that conversation, I don't think I've sat with anybody who's talked to me about insurance. And I didn't realize that, shoot, the value of it. At this point, we had our third child. Yeah, all three of our kids were born at this point. Our youngest was only a few months, and we had a house. We were paying for the mortgage insurance, but really didn't know the value of it, what it entailed, and everything. And then when we sat down with you guys, it was like, oh wow! Not only are we saving money, but we're getting proper protection. Have our assign our own beneficiaries. But then in that conversation, I was like, wow, this guy's getting to be his own boss. He's running his own business at his own pace And I'm like, this is kind of cool. I'm like, I would love to know more about this. And that's when I reached out to you. And the rest is history. But it just showed like you not only were you able to help your clients out, but you're also able to help so many different advisors and change their lifestyle and the income that they can make and how many other people that they can help in the process, right? So that's huge. That's a huge thing, man. But now you and I, we worked together at the bank for a number of years, and we were actually in the same department for about 2, 3 years together. But when you left, you mentioned this. You said you were making about 42,000, and that was after about 6, 7 years of being there. Tell us, someone that's been making 42,000, how, tell us how someone making that type of income is able to literally 10x their income in about 8 or 9 years. Literally went from 40 to 400,000 in that time frame. What did you do? And tell us how someone else can do the same thing, because there's a lot of people who are scared to get into this industry because they're like, it's commission based. How am I going to process? How am I going to find clients? Tell us how you did it and how someone else can do it.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's many different facets of that question. I'll touch on a couple of them. First and foremost, guys, you just got to find a system that you believe in, right? When I joined my practice company, I believed that there I can make more money than I did before, right? When I joined Experior, I believed that I can make an impact, right? And in turn, it was no longer about the commission, it was now the mission, right? And I knew
Mm,
that focusing on the mission, I was going to be able to increase the commission to get to where I need to be. So that's the first thing, right? Find a platform, right? I'll tell you this much. If you're watching this right now, you need to reach out to Tyrone after you watch this and ask him what you can do or how this could be a platform for you, right? When you're at the right platform, now you're going to be put in front of the right coach, right? And you have to find it within yourself. If you're not a coachable person, you have to, be able to take a back seat and be like, okay, teach me what you got, especially if that person it has a track record and they're doing the things that you want to do. Why wouldn't you want to listen to them, right? Why wouldn't you want to be coached and take
so true.
direction and do what they're telling you to do? It's not because, they just want to boss you around. No, it's because they win when you win, right? So
Yeah,
their primary focus is to get you to win. So the least you could do is listen on the steps you need to take to become a winner, right? Um, After that, and it's very hard, especially when you are on a commission platform, but if you are working full time, right? Start off part-time, you know,
mm,
get your feet wet,
but
right? Don't jump 2 feet in. Now I had to, my practice company, wouldn't let me do anything. I couldn't even drive Uber if even if I was about to go homeless to make some extra money, they wouldn't allow it,
I
man.
know.
But here at Experian, we have so many phenomenal people that join part-time, they get licensed, they learn the craft, they become comfortable with it. They start seeing the success, the fruits of their labor, and they start seeing how quickly they can replace their full-time income with part-time work, right?
Yeah,
And then, in that short period of time, now the decision to jump in full-time, it's no longer a question of oh man, this is commission. It's a question, it's like, oh man, I'm missing out on all this commission because now I'm serving two masters, right? I got my full-time job and I got my
true.
part-time job. I need to do this full-time, right? Because now when you've proven to yourself that you can do this part-time and replace your full-time income, it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah,
But here's the one biggest thing, right? Never lose sight of the mission, right? It has to be the mission over commission, right? And people that tend to lose sight over the mission, they get what we call commission breath, right? Commission breath is when you sit in front of your prospect and they know what you're
yeah,
after, right? They know you're after some money, and that's the one thing that'll see you out of the business because they won't do business with you, they won't refer you, and before you know it, you'll have a very hard time, right?
yeah,
So you need to learn how to do business the right way right from the start, right? To work on becoming on mastering the process, whatever system you're put in front of as soon as possible, start experiencing that success and jump in full time, right?
that's huge.
And never look
That's
back.
huge.
Honestly, never look back. I'll tell you this much, man. Like, there's so many times and so many years I started the year thinking, like, hey, man, like, could I do the same thing I did last year? Last year, I was able to put food on the table and I was able to do the things I can for my family. But what about this year, right? And you're going to have these self-limiting
Mhm.
thoughts, but the more you work on yourself and your mindset, the less these self-limiting thoughts have an effect on you. These self-limiting beliefs, right? And
Yeah,
that's why, I'm forever grateful for being in the hierarchy that we're in today because we work on this week in and week out, and that's been the single most important training in all the trainings that I do, both, within Experior and outside on my own, is that personal development mindset training that we do every week because it allows me to think the way I need to think so I can keep my head in the game, right? So I
That's a
get a
good point.
bunch of different little
That's
things.
a good point. Yeah, no, great answer. That's a great point. Like, and so then, I mean, to tag along to that, then how important is personal development in your opinion?
I didn't realize how important it was until I got into Experior.
Wow.
While I was with my practice company, I jumped into Experior. I didn't sign up, but they allowed me to jump in and sit on their training. So I did that for a month, right?
Yep.
And when I started to sit on those Wednesday morning trainings, I was like, whoa, what is this?
Hmm.
I'm starting to listen. I'm just like, wait, this is powerful stuff. And I'm starting to think like, if I think this way, then none of this matters anymore. All the stuff that I used to spend time on that I shouldn't have spent time on, those things start, and I put a lot of importance on, those things then became less important because I really learned, how to be a more effective thinker, right? How to be more effective just in everything I was doing. So, that's when I started to realize the importance of personal development mindset training, right? And I'll tell you this much, if I didn't have that, I don't think that I would have gone to 400 grand by this period of time. I really don't.
Yep. Yep.
Um, you know, like many people, when things hit you from left field or they blindside you, it takes you off the beaten path, and sometimes it takes you off for a good bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And just the personal development mindset training, it gave me the know-how on how to minimize that downtime. So I'm still gonna have downtime, but instead of it being a week of downtime, it's like an hour or two now, right? And then I can get my
That's
head
good.
back in the game and away we go, right? And that's what happens. One of the things that happens when you constantly work on yourself,
That's huge. You need that rebound time. It's got to be quick.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Man, I've heard stories of people, taking 2 weeks off and just sitting there and playing video games, bro. It's kind of like,
Yeah, you go into a depression when you do that, right?
yeah, man, and time is borrowed. And here's the worst part about it is when you lose momentum, it's 10
Yeah.
times harder to get it back.
Oh man.
And I
It's
learned
so
that the hard way, man. There's been a couple
yeah.
times in my career where I've almost went flat out broke because,
Yeah.
I didn't spend my time wisely, right? I lost
Yeah.
momentum, and then it took a while for me to get the momentum back, and things got a little hairy a couple times, right? But I learned from those, right? And I learned how to minimize my rebound time. That was probably one of the biggest things that I could have learned for myself.
That's massive. Got to get that rebound time quick, right on point. But
Mhm.
I'm just taking notes because you hit like I love what you said, the mission over commission. We got to have a reason why we're doing this, right? Like for me, I'm big at church, and my thing is I want to be able to help provide for the church and just the impact that our church has. And there's so many other causes. Other people have different reasons why they want to do this for their families or whatever, right? And when that's the focus, and the money's gonna come, and it just drives you. That's what wakes you up every day. And we talk a lot about understanding your why and why that's so important. But and then you also mentioned about the part time. I love that because this opportunity allows you to start part time. We've had a few part timers in this company that have made over 100,000 doing it part time.
Yeah.
Like, where can you work at that's going to give you an opportunity to make six figures part time?
We have somebody who's part-time as a senior manager, not even an executive director, who's making over $600,000.
Like, and I believe they work somewhere else too.
Yeah,
My
he has
understanding,
a full-time job and he loves what he does. Right? That's why he's still doing it part-time. It's
like,
just wild.
my gosh, like think about that. Like that's more. That's like more than what CEOs are making in
Exactly.
some cases, right? In some industries. And like this guy's doing it part-time. So it just shows you what this opportunity has to offer, right? But let me ask you this, like in your mind, like what was a turning point for you when you realized like, you know what, I really can do this and I can take this to a completely different level. But what was it, I guess, for you that kind of had to push you over that needle that said, okay, I gotta put my head down and really focus now to make this happen?
You know what? It was when I had my first child.
Mm,
My son Aiden. So my son Aiden's he's a child with autism. Didn't know it. We didn't know, and most people won't don't know until, your child's about 2 or 3.
Okay.
But when I had my first child, man, that's when everything became real because until that point, it was just Sophie and I, we had our condo, we had a cat,
Yeah.
we were just doing our thing, going out, living the non-child life. And when I held my son, man, I was like, everything changed, bro, and I don't even know how. It wasn't even like I had to think about the change. It was just like somebody flicked a light switch, and
Look
just
at
now
that.
everything that I thought that was important before, I was like, no, like this is important, right? And my
Yeah.
why changed too, right? It's like I have this son now. I'm responsible for a life, right? And I need to do everything in my power to give this life the best life, right?
Yeah.
Live the best life that it possibly can, right? And yeah, man, and you know what? It's
Wow.
funny
That's
every
huge.
time, yeah, every time so then I had my daughter, same thing, like I had an explosion in my business, man. Like I won't lie, I was scared out of my mind with both kids, right? And it took me, that's where, I had to struggle with rebound time because, when these big things come up, right, and it
Hmm.
hits you because from by surprise, you're just like, whoa, okay, I need to take a step back and just kind of sort out my thoughts and reevaluate my priorities. But then when my daughter was born a couple years ago, same thing. It was just like, okay, now there's two lives that I'm responsible for. Now it's like the motivation, the push, the drive to do what I'm doing just increased tenfold, right? Now we're about to have a number 3 coming soon, right?
Look
So
at that. Congratulations.
there you go, man. And that's going to be the third push to,
Yeah.
to that's going to be in my business to continue building and growing, right? Like, no word of a lie, I put a lot of time in the business, but it doesn't feel like I work a lot just because I know what I've created. I know what I'm going to continue to create, right?
Yeah.
If you do it once, you can do it again, and that's where I'm headed.
That's huge, man. And I can see how your face lit up as soon as you started talking about the kids, man.
That's
It's
it,
it's
bro.
it's true, man. Like we do this for our family, we do this for our kids, right? I remember when Frank he reminded me of it. He made me bring it up again the lot when I had him on the Facebook Live, and when that time when there was a shooting in my backyard,
Yeah.
and that was like from that point, that was a turning point for me. And I was like, we had our 3 kids. My youngest was, I think he was maybe about 3. And I was like, no, there's no way I could have my family living in this type of environment. And I remember just putting my head down. And for those next 2 years, I did everything I could to get them out of that situation. And literally, the situation completely turned 180. And I was like, but it just shows you our capability when we're motivated and we feel like, you know what, our back's against the wall, where it's either you sink or swim at this point. And I've seen you do that countless amount of times, right? So if you want to motivate Tariq, make sure he has more kids, man.
Oh no, I'm done. I'm done after number 3. But no, I've seen the same thing with you, brother. And especially like I remember when you were telling me, I think we were chatting on the phone, bro. You were saying like they found like gun shells in your backyard and
Yeah, it was
like
crazy.
and it was a short time after, bro. You went from like SFA to SM to ED to six-figure earner, and then got your maybe my timelines are a little mixed, but I think it was around
Yeah,
the same time. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, man. Like your motivation, your why went through the roof, bro. You blew through every target in less than a year, within a
yeah.
12-month period, and shortly afterwards, you were able to move your family into a better neighborhood, way better neighborhood, man. Like no offense to anybody who's in Brampton watching this, but like Brampton back then is not like how it is today, bro.
No, not at all.
It's pretty wild there. But anyways, yeah, way better neighborhood, right?
Yeah,
Phenomenal, beautiful house, and just, you
yeah,
know,
man.
buying your first luxury car, bro.
You know what? That was another milestone too, man, and you were a part of that. So the thing is I wouldn't have been able to have these opportunities had I not taken the chance and jumped into this industry.
Exactly.
Right? And people don't realize what they're missing out on, how many people they can help out in their situations, how they can help change their families' lives because they're stuck like I'm in a fixed income. I can only take my business this far. I can only go this far. But it's like, who's fixing that for you? You could put yourself in a position where it's like, now there's no cap. Like I can never go back to working a regular job.
No.
I was thinking about that a couple years ago, and I was like, I love this. I'm like, yeah, there's going to be times that it's tough, but at the end of the day, you get to dictate the flow of your business. What you put in is what you're going to get out of it. And if you're willing to work 8 hours for somebody else's vision, why not do it for your own?
exactly.
right? So no,
Yeah.
that's huge. Yeah, man. So now tell me a story, like because obviously you kind of touched on I know you have some great stories because we've talked about this in the past, but tell me a story of how you helped a client benefit from the products that we offer. And it could be your story, something that happened to you personally. It could be, a client of yours. But tell us a story of, of client interaction where they benefited from the products and services we offer.
Yeah, so the first one is the one that hits home the hardest, and that's with my own son, right? So I attended training one day, and at that time, this was pre-COVID, we had trainings in person, and the training was with Humania, I believe,
Mm,
for carriers, and they were talking about the Children's 360 program, and this was right when Sophie was pregnant with Aiden, so I was listening in, and they were talking about Children's 360, and he said something super, super that it just stuck in my head, and basically one of the stats was that most childhood illnesses present themselves between the ages of 4 and 6.
wow.
So that's why, having critical illness for your kids is super important, right? Just because here's all the things that can happen. Your kid gets sick, you're going to drop work, your income's going to be impacted depending where you need to go. You may need to fund, a stay, whatever the case is. It's just making sure that the money is there when the time is needed, when it's needed. So I put a policy in place for Aiden. And Aiden, around the age of 2, he just wasn't eating solid food. He just
Mm,
only wanted breast milk. He just had this food aversion, and he basically started dropping weight. And then we were in close contact with his pediatrician, and it got to a point where he was dropping because there's only so much nourishment that a kid can get from breast milk because
yeah.
the breast milk, s- the nourishment diminishes over time, right? So.
Yes.
It got to a point where the pediatrician's like, no, we gotta get him in to do a nasal tube, and he's like, we're gonna do this tomorrow, and like it kind of hits by surprise. This is March 2020, bro. And you know what happened in March 2020? COVID, right?
COVID.
Yeah, man, bro. Scariest time in my life was
Wow.
driving because they both had to go to the hospital for sick kids, and they had to stay there for a week. That was the scariest time in my life was when my wife and my first child, my only child at that time, had to be in a hospital for a week when the whole world's going crazy about COVID and nobody knew anything about it. Like the whole place was shutting down, right?
And he was what, like two at the time?
Yeah, yeah, he just turned 2. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, man, it was wild. So when he was born, I put in place 2 policies for him: a Beneva, Universal Life with critical illness, and a Humana Children's 360 Life and critical illness.
Wow.
Um, so he had a feeding tube. He had a feeding tube put in, and for almost about a year. Shortly afterwards, he was diagnosed with autism, and we didn't realize, how expensive it is, but our first year bill for our child, because we're not only were we doing behavioral therapy, we're doing speech therapy, we're doing occupational therapy, we were doing something else as well. I forget, it just slipped my mind. But our bill that year was between 60 to 70 grand.
Wow.
People don't get prepared for this. And there's the Ontario Autism
Wow.
program, but you apply, you're on a waiting list for 2 years, and then eventually you get a chunk of money, but you got to prove your expenses, otherwise they claw it back. So the reality is that if you don't have that kind of money sitting around, which most people don't, where you can
Yeah.
just drop it in the blink of an eye and say, okay, well, I'll do whatever I need to do for my kid, then you're really stressing out at that time. But thankfully, I claimed on one of the policies and I was able to get $50,000. The other policy I didn't claim on because I figured, hey, if he's diagnosed with autism, he may not be able to get critical illness again. So at least let me keep one going,
Okay.
right? So for
Wow.
his
Yeah.
future, right? So lucky enough, I got both and I claimed on one, and that awarded us the money to care for him the way he needed to be cared for. And now today he's turning 7 this year. People look at him and they're like, I couldn't even tell if he was a child with autism,
No, you
right?
can't.
And
Yeah.
it was because we were awarded those funds from that policy that allowed us. to give him the best level of care. It was like no question, like we're gonna do this for him. And the doctor was saying we'll recommend this and this. I'm like, okay, let's do it. I didn't even have to think about what it costs because that policy gave me the money to do it, right? Put him in Montessori school right from the get-go, right? Just do whatever it took, right? So that was probably the most impactful story that personally impactful story to me. But
That's
there's
huge.
there's been tons of other families where we've helped them, put together the right protection in place for put together the right strategies to keep things tax efficient, right? I had one family that where I've helped the father with a life insurance policy, and 8 months later, God rest his soul, he passed, right? And he
Mm.
was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer, but it just happened 8 months later. But that policy, was able to be awarded to the family, so they at least had some money to figure out their next steps and do what they needed to do moving forward, right? Now, the almost the entire family, they're clients of mine, right?
Look at that. Yeah.
I don't think it's a family that would have normally looked into insurance until they saw of what it did for them when it came time to claim on it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, yeah, there's so many stories I can think of. There's one family where, less than a year later, we're paying out a critical illness claim because, well, the wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, right? Just a year ago, I met with them,
Mm.
put their policies in place. All they had was term insurance. I gave them a little bit of critical illness, and now, the wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and we're able to give out a claim, a payout, a significant payout. So now the burden of finances doesn't hang over them as they take time off to regroup and get treatment and do the things they need to do as a family.
Wow. Wow. These are key stories. And like it just shows you the lives we're able to help change on a day-to-day basis. Like this is what we offer, right? We offer financial services, insurance, investments. A lot of people don't want to talk about insurance because they think like if I talk about it, it's going to happen to me. But the reality of it is it's going to happen to it happens to everybody at some point. Some point people are going to pass away. And a good portion of people suffer from certain illnesses and they don't know what to do when that happens. They're struggling financially. They have to take out a loan. They have to set up a GoFundMe. They got to borrow money. They got to dip into their savings, which was supposed to be used for retirement or other things, right? It wasn't supposed to be used to pay off hospital expenses and other things like that, right? Just to survive. So when you have that type of protection, like you, everyone listening, you guys heard some amazing stories just now. So you get your finances in order. That's all I gotta say. Get your finances in order.
That's it, brother. Here's what I tell people. Yeah, insurance is money that's left behind, right?
Mm.
So insurance, it pays out, it goes to either yourself if you're alive, let's say it's an injury or disability policy, or God forbid you pass, it goes to your survivors, right? But here's also what it does. What a lot of people don't realize is that it actually protects your financial plan as well, right? Because just like you mentioned, without insurance, if there's a death or an illness or injury, what's happening? Savings are now being dipped into. And then when savings are gone, it's like, okay, now you got to dip into available credit. And when available credit is gone, well, what do you have left? Right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how most bankruptcies occur in North America, right? So with the right insurance plan in place for yourself and your family, that plan is protected. So let's say something does happen, you're still alive, you can pick up from where you left off and continue, right? When
Mm.
it comes right.
Exactly. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's all it is. People don't realize that. So people need to, wake up and start putting their finances in order. So that's huge, man. I got a couple more questions for you. I know you got to run real soon, so I don't want to hold you up too much longer. But
All
tell me, people listening in, why do you think someone should join this industry? Financial services, getting their LOQP license. Why should someone join?
You should join if you want to do something legitimate, something viable, something that's purpose and impact driven. If you want to help people, if you want to work people, if what drives you is to make a difference in someone's life, this is why you should join. Because in turn, I know that everybody, the primary focus for many is themselves, but this is how you end up changing your life is by changing others. right? This is what this industry allows you to do, right? Like I said, it's not about the commission, it's about the mission, but the commission follows the mission, right? It always does. So if you put your best foot forward, get licensed, jump in, figure out how to play the money game for yourself by helping others do it as well. Change your life, change theirs. It's a win-win.
Huge. Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many industries out there, and I've seen firsthand this industry has been probably the most, just in my opinion, the most successful in the sense of being able to help so many lives. Because the products and services we offer, everybody needs them. Being able to see, like, I put together a strategy for a client where they're literally going to get out of debt 16 years sooner, saving over $185,000 just in interest alone. Like, just thinking about that, it blows my mind. Just what we're able to do, right? It's huge.
Right. And then and here's the best part about it, when you teach people as an advisor, when you teach your clients the do's and don'ts of the money game, what to do and how to do it, guess what? They're now empowered with knowledge. And especially if they have a family, now they have something that they can teach their future generations on too.
Absolutely.
Because think of it this way, it's what we're in a developed country. Let's be honest here. We're in a developed country, but we're lacking. And the biggest thing we're lacking on is financial literacy. It's just not being taught. And when you try to find information, guess what? It's a company advertising, or it's a program you got to buy into, or it's someone's opinion versus, what people are really needing is that educational based advice on where they are today. And that's just not there, right? So now when you sit down with a family, not only do you empower them with a financial plan and the peace of mind that things are going to happen when they're supposed to happen, as long as both parties do their thing. But now you've impacted that family and its future generations in a positive manner too, right?
Yeah.
And when you think of the impact, it's not just for the family today, it's for the generations in the future too. Because I know this much, if somebody did that for my parents and then they were able to teach me, what I know now, I would have made way better decisions growing up, right?
Mm.
Right. But they didn't have somebody to be their financial coach, right? My mom always told me, save money for a rainy day. And when it rained, I spent it because that's what I was saving it for, right? So, but it was good advice, but it was what she knew, and
Yeah.
she tried her
Yeah.
best to advise me, and I'll always be grateful for that. But that's the extent of what most people have, is right. It's just
Yeah.
basic principles. So, not only are we're coaches, we're educators too, right? We're giving people things that they should have been given, many years ago, but they weren't able to get until we sat down with them. Man, like when you really dissect our role and what we actually do, it's more than just a needs analysis, it's more than just products and services, right?
So
It's,
true.
we're helping people leave sort of a financial legacy, right?
Mm. So good.
Um,
So
you
good.
know,
Yeah, man. So two more quick questions here.
yes, sir.
Who or what has been your biggest influence or inspiration as a business owner, and why?
You know what? My number one biggest influence, I gotta say, has been my wife.
Okay.
Without her, I wouldn't have been here. Uh,
Wow. That's
I
good.
probably wouldn't have joined the industry, right? She's always been there. She may not be, as knowledgeable in the industry as myself,
Mm.
but the way, what she tells me, the way she coached me on things that I didn't know, just without being too specific, she helped me put things into perspective that helped me grow the way I grew
Mm.
in this industry. And the second is, my mentor, Frank.
Mm.
I'll tell you this much, like I didn't realize what it was like to have a coach until, you know, I met Frank. And not
Yeah.
only was he, he's there for me in the business, but he's also there for me as a friend outside the business too. Like we developed such a close relationship. He emceed my wedding, man. Like
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, and he did a phenomenal job at it too. But just, I'd say, in the business, those have been my two biggest influences is, my family, my wife, and then my mentor Frank.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, because they always gave me advice you know, without expecting anything in return. It was always unbiased advice that was always for my betterment, right?
Wow.
And that's priceless in my opinion.
That's good. That's awesome, man. Last question, brother.
Mhm.
What legacy do you hope to leave through your business, and what do you want people to remember you for?
And that's a loaded question. You know what? I want people to know that I gave it my all.
Mm,
And that through that, I was able to help so many people, right?
mm,
Like I tell everybody, it's like, yeah, these numbers are great and all that stuff, but all of that's indicative of how many people we've helped, how many people we've worked with, how many lives we changed, right?
so true.
That's what I want to be known as. I have a huge goal of mine is to get to a financial point where I can now put a big portion of my time towards philanthropy, right? And just doing things to help people become better, regardless of what it is, whether it's, putting sweat equity in or being able to allocate money towards a certain cause or a mission, you know, that to me is just, that's the big vision. And I want my kids to look back and say, and when I'm not here to be like, my dad was a good person. He
Mm,
he lived a good life and he helped a lot of people, right? That's what I
yeah,
want to be known for, right?
that's huge.
Like now it's like everybody's like, hey, news $400,000. That's that doesn't even phase me in the sense where, if somebody said, hey, you're a person that I know that does good work and that
Yeah,
really cares about people, that means more to me than any monetary
yeah,
dollar figure, right?
that's huge, bro. And yeah, you know what? I can attest to that because before we even got to this business, as entrepreneurs, the one of the first memories I remember from you was that time when I bought that deck for my SUV. And you came with me and you stayed that whole time. And I was like, bro, you don't have to stay, like, but it just showed me your heart and the type of person you were. And I was like, wow, like this guy's really willing to help me that much. We didn't know each other that much at that point, but that's when we really started to get to know each other. And because I realized I was like, wow, this is a guy. He's got a good heart. He's trustworthy and someone I can connect with. And that's how that whole thing started. And you know what? Like it's true. When you put in that type of work and effort, the finances they follow, people have the wrong motive and they just want to chase the finances and they're always chasing it because they can never get to them. But when your motive is, I want to help people, everything else just comes into play, right? When you're that servant leader. So this was huge, brother. I love this, man.
That's it, man. It's God's work, brother. That's what it
That's
is.
so true, man. Well, I thank you so much, brother, for jumping on this. This was awesome, man. This is we got to learn so much from you, man. And for those of you who are watching this, guys, share this. Let people know because there were so many gems that were spoken of. I'm gonna go back and rewatch this. But again, thank you so much, brother, for jumping on. And yeah, man, we'll see you on the top.